Today, what we are going to integrate all of these APIs in the actual component. For now, though, we have just defined these functions, right? So now I'll go to my to-do app, okay? And here I've just done this thing. I've in the use effect, generally that's where we call our APIs, right? So we have called this function get to-dos. We have not passed any params, okay? So when we don't pass any params, it will just give us all the to-dos. And we have just logged the response. So let's just see what is happening here. When I go to localhost 3000, so I'm getting the to-dos, okay? And I'm getting the array of 200 items. And if I check console, it is getting printed. Okay? So this service which we wrote, that is working. It is giving us the correct response. Hai na?
Yes.
Okay. So today now we will use React query to manage these. Now, whenever we make an API call, what will we do? First, we will have to do some action like set loading to true, correct? Then once we have got the response, we'll have to do something like set loading to true. If we get some error, right, we will have to catch that error and we will have to trigger some action, right? Show the error to the user in some way, है ना? तो ये सब लॉजिक हमें हर बार करना पड़ेगा और हर एक एपीआई के लिए करना पड़ेगा. So after we get the to-dos, we also need to set it to state, है ना? So we will have to have to-dos, set to-dos, loading, set loading, and then error, set error, something like that. Correct?
Yes.
So instead of managing all of this by ourselves, we are going to use React query. Okay. So in React query, so the first step is we have to set up React query. I'll just one second. Yeah, just move this part. Okay. So the first thing is we have to set up React query. Setting up React query is pretty simple. We have a query. So first we have to install React query using npm install. Okay. There are the docs links are appended in the PPT. Okay. So there's a link for installing and setting up React query. So we can easily follow those. There's nothing major in it. You just use npm install React query. And this is all the setup that is required. Okay. So एक query client करके कुछ तो होता है. Don't pay attention to this term right now. And there is the provider. So we just have to wrap the entire app inside this provider so that we can use query inside it. That's it. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
This is just boilerplate. इसको समझने की जरूरत नहीं है. It is just ये करना पड़ता है to start using React query. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
All right. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use React query to fetch our data. So let's they give us a hook called useQuery. So I'm going to say const to do query equal to useQuery. Okay. Now, useQuery accepts two arguments. First is a key. So this entity is going to be our to-dos. So we'll call it to-dos. And second argument is a function that we have to call when the page mounts. So whenever the page component mounts, this function will be called. Okay?
Yes.
So useQuery takes care of all this internally for us. We don't have to think about all these things. All right?
Okay.
Now, we'll just console log the to-do query and check what is happening. Okay, what are we getting out here? So I'll refresh. Actually, this one is getting triggered from inside. So I'll remove this use effect right now. I'll refresh again. So now it logged 2 times. First time, it was in a status of loading. Second time, it was in the status of success. So if you see, when it was in status loading, we have, this is an object, right? Whatever we're getting here, to do query, it is an object. Initially, it will have is loading true. Okay. Is success false? Is error false? Okay. There is no success, there is no failure. Abhi tak it has not been called only. Second one, we get a status of success. Is loading is false. Is success is true. And is error is false. This is basically how every API will work. Hai na? Okay, I think I'm missing something. Can you all ask me some question? Ke, kya ho raha hai? Or should I go back once again and explain what we're doing?
नहीं, मेरा just एक question था इसके अंदर. कोड में जाओगे आप?
Yeah.
So suppose we are using the useQuery, and here we have mount that to do, right? That function to get to dos, right?
Yeah.
Suppose I want to call the another API. So I want to write the useQuery again.
If you want to call another API, matlab like get users.
Right.
Then you will have to write it again. Correct.
And that to do words also changed by users.
You'll have to change this. Otherwise, it will overwrite. Whichever will come second will overwrite the first one. So yes, you should use the unique name.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is how you would do it. Saili, you have some question?
No.
Okay. So right now, all that useQuery is doing, it is taking this function. Internally, whenever the component mounts, it is calling that function. And whenever we get the response from the API, it does 3 things, right? It changes, one is it changes the is loading flag. So first the is loading flag is true. It automatically changes to false. We didn't have to do this. Okay. Then the is success was false. It turns is success to true. That's number 2. Number 3 is initially, if you see, data out here is undefined. Okay, that is when the component first time it loads. Okay. And if in the second case you see, data has 200 items. That means whatever data we got from the API, it has been set, it basically gets stored inside this data key. Making sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So now what I'll do is, right now we have these to-dos. You know? So
one more question.
Yeah.
So we remove that use effect, right?
Yeah, we've removed the use effect.
And we pass that get to this function in the use query.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So that use effect we are using for that API call once time now.
Correct.
So use query maybe API call one time hi hoga.
Right? Good question. Fantastic question. I'll come to that. Basically, use query will not call the API again till this key changes, this query key changes. We'll come to that very, very quickly. We'll come to that. Okay? But yeah, you're right. It will not call it again every time there is some re-render. So let me, we'll come to it in some time.
Okay.
So now what I'll do is, so the typical way we use it is we destructure everything, whatever we require from you. So हमको data तो चाहिए, and data in our case is the list of to-dos only. So we just remove this other one and we'll call this to-dos. We'll have is loading, and what else? We'll require the error if there's any error. Now ये loading equal to false है. So I'll just remove this and I'll make this is loading. Okay. Now just one second. Oh, thanks, man. Thanks a lot. Sorry. So Abhi, now one thing we see is this has created an error for me. है ना? Okay, this to-dos can be get to-dos response or it can be undefined. Correct? And it is not assignable to this array type. So इसको fix करना पड़ेगा. Right? So easy way to fix it is using the OR operator. What the OR operator will do is it will say if to-dos is present, then you return to-dos, or if to-dos is not there, it's undefined or it's null or if it's any falsy value, then return whatever is next, which will be in our case an empty array. ठीक है?
नहीं
नहीं।
समझा.
Okay, cool, great. So to-dos first time जब हम load करते हैं, when we load it first time, data is undefined.
हाँ, correct.
That means to-dos will also be
undefined.
Correct? Now to-do list, if we check the props for to-do list, right? It expects an array of to-do items.
To-do item. Okay, and वो optional भी नहीं है.
Ha, it's not even optional. So if it is undefined, TypeScript will give us an error that, hey, this is not handled.
Okay.
Right? So to manage that, what we do is we say, if to-dos is there, then send that. Otherwise, you just send an empty array.
Okay.
That works. It's like placeholder data, है ना? Initial data जैसे treat करेंगे उसको. And if you see this works, so now I'll just refresh this. So we're seeing loading. It's going very quickly, but we're seeing loading, and then we're seeing this entire UI. Okay. So this is now happening from useQuery. Correct?
Yes.
All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add filters to it. Okay. So get to-dos, first thing we can do is we can paginate this data. All right. We'll show 10 at a time. And whenever we click next, we should see the next 10. Okay. So for this, one is I will define a constant page size equal to 10. Right. And I will define a state variable because page number change hote rahega, right? So page number, comma, set page number, new state will start with 1. Okay. Now, in get to-dos, we can pass this as a parameter. So if we check our API docs, we can pass underscore page as a number, and we can pass underscore limit. Underscore page will be the page number, underscore limit will be the page size. So let's add that. Underscore page will be page number. Underscore limit will be the page size. So now let's check the network tab. Let's refresh. So as you can see, we called the same API, to-dos API, with page 1, limit 10, and we got only 10 in response. Okay? Next thing we're going to do is we'll have to change the page number somewhere. So let's just add some buttons to do that. We'll add a div, one button for previous, then we'll show the current page number, and one button for next. Okay. And so we've got the buttons in place, but obviously they don't do anything. So we'll just define the on click. So when I click on previous, what should happen, Saili?
Page number should decrease.
Decrease. So how will I do that?
And click new state.
Correct.
Say
So,
page number.
Yeah.
Page number -1.
Perfect. Page number -1. And same thing on next. That's fine.
Yes.
Perfect. So now the page number should change. Let's refresh the page. Now page, if we see the API has been called page 1 limit 10. But now I'm clicking on next, page number has changed, but the API is not getting called again. Right?
Yes.
So let's understand what's happening. So when this page renders, okay, first time it will go to this line. So as we remember, right, when we set page number, the whole component re-renders, and it'll run every line one at a time. So it'll go to const page size, const page number, it'll get the previous state. Then it'll come to this line, the useQuery line. Now, what useQuery does is when it is called, it will check, has this query key changed? If it has changed, then it will call this function again. If it has not changed, then it will just return the previous value. Okay? It will not call this function again. Okay? So now this is very similar to use effect only. Think about this as the dependency array. If the dependency array changes, then only the function gets called. If the dependency array does not change, then the function does not get called. Right? So so the query key can either be a constant string or it can be an array, just like dependency array again, right? So in the array, we can add the page number because we want to call it every time the page number changes. So if I save now, and now if I come here, and I click next. Now we're saying we get page number 2, we get page number 3, and the response is changing correctly. Okay? But if you see, when I went back also, it got the data. Okay, I'll talk about that a little later. Okay. So now one thing is, if we see, we went to page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. Now if we came back to page 5, we shouldn't call it again, right? We already called that data. वो data ज़्यादा change नहीं हुआ होगा, right? So what we can do is we can add a property inside index.tsx. So this is where React query really helps us. It helps us smartly decide when should we make an API call and when should we not make an API call. So I'll just show you this, right? So inside this query client, I have some default options. Again, this is not something that I'm going to go in depth in. Okay? Right now, I'm just going to demonstrate it, and we can, you all can explore it in more detail later on. Okay? What I've done is I've added a stale time. Let's make 3000 now. Stale time of 3000. इसका मतलब ये होता है कि once I fetch some data, okay, let's say I fetch page 1. React query, अगर वापस I try to fetch page 1, React query will say, this data is already available with me. Okay. वो ये सारा डेटा ना स्टोर करके रखता है एक कैश में. It stores it in a cache, and when the user requests it again, it says if the data has not expired, means it is under 3 seconds, then I will give you the same data back. I will not make the API call again. Let's just look at it in action. So if I go next and previous, so now this time page number 1 did not get called again. Correct?
But data भी change नहीं हुआ, I think.
हाँ, data भी change नहीं हुआ. नहीं, page number 1 का data आ गया यहाँ पे. We'll see it. So this is page number 1. Let's go next. Page number 2, previous, page number 1. I think we waited for too long. So let me increase this. Let's make it 10 seconds. Yeah. Okay. Next, page number 2, previous. Page number 1, the API call did not go. Okay. Again, I'll go to 2, API call did not go. Now I'll go to 1 and 10 seconds have passed. So page number 1 will get fetched again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is as we would expect, right? So typically you can keep this at 5 minutes and there will be, so most of the time, see, when you want ekdam real-time data, you should not set this. Okay. This would be bad. But in most cases, in most of our web apps, we can set a comfortable stale time that, you know what, this data, it is not going to be real-time updated every time. Okay. So that's how fetching the data. This is clear?
ये जो टाइम हम सेट कर रहे हैं वो मतलब पूरे सिस्टम मतलब पूरे ऐप के लिए सेट होगा क्या या फिर एपीआई?
Great question. So this time will get set by default. So if we set it on query client, it will get set by default for all the queries. Okay. If I want to change it for a particular query, let's say I want to change it for get to do's only. Okay. What I will do is I will add an option. So there is a third argument. So this is argument 1, the query keys. Argument 2 is the query function. And argument 3 is the options. Now, is options may again I have stale time. And I can say for all others, you can use 30,000 seconds, milliseconds, 30,000 milliseconds. But for this particular API, I want a stale time of 0. Now, if I refresh and I click next, previous, it will call every time because the stale time is 0. Okay, fantastic question. Great. Now, last thing we need to handle is we need to handle an error too. So right now, let's just create a fake error in to-do services by just changing the URL. Now, this should give us a 404 error. And let's come into our app, refresh. So exactly, we see this page is giving us a 404 error. And yeah. So now what we will do is let's just check. So we are getting an error, but let's check what gets stored inside React queries error object. Right? That will give us an idea of what we can print on the screen. So let's console log this error. Right. So this is the error object. Error bad request. And there is a message, request failed with status code 404. This I think we can show the user. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's make it such that if there is an error, we don't show anything empty. We actually show the user this error that this request has failed, or this message. So here we can come and we can say, so if it is loading, then we want to show a loader. If it has loaded, but there is an error, then we want to show maybe inside a H4 tag the error message. Correct? And if there is no error, then only you return this to-do list component. Making sense? Let's try this out. We'll resolve this error in some time. So it's loading. So loading. Request failed with status code 404. Okay. Is it making sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now we got this error. Now we're seeing this TypeScript error. Right? These are type unknown. So what we need to do is we need to mention a error kis type ka hoga, because TypeScript does not know what will be the type of the error, right? So we can use this in useQuery. We can pass 2 arguments. One is what will be the response data kaisa dikhega. So that will be get to do response. And error right now, we'll just put Axios error. And this should solve our TypeScript issue. Right? So Axios का error आ जाएगा अगर fail हुआ तो. All right. Any questions on this so far? Anything that your questions that you're facing? Any behavior that you're seeing that is weird?
No.
You guys are clear? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this comfortable? Should I go over this again? This syntax? कुछ uncomfortable लग रहा है इसमें?
नहीं, clear है.
कुछ भी ऐसा flow है जो शायद वापस you want me to go through it again? Siley?
No.
Sure?
Yes.
Okay. So this was about useQuery. Now, in this, we also need to manage this show completed. Let's control the show completed one, right? तो यहाँ पे एक function है mark to do completed, जिससे नहीं sorry, not mark to do completed, toggle show completed. That is the function that allows the user to set what whether we are showing completed or not, right? तो इधर एक normal state variable create करते हैं, show completed, comma set show completed equal to use state of false, right? And where is show completed? हाँ यहाँ पे. In toggle show completed, what should we do? Toggle show completed means when the user clicks on this checkbox, show completed checkbox. Siley, you can help me out here.
We should set show completed to opposite of
Perfect.
current state.
Show completed. Perfect. Right?
Yes.
And now we want this also to affect the API data, because see, right now we are getting page one data. Okay, sorry, we'll undo that change that we had made. Okay. So now hopefully we should get the correct data. Great. Now, if I click on show completed and if I filter, अगर मैं इधर ही filter कर देता हूँ list को, right? हाँ, screening में क्या हो गया? हाँ, call चल रहा है.
आंसर सारे सही
अरे
है.
call चालू है. नहीं. हाँ. Okay. So अभी कैसा है, मेरे पास यहाँ पे सिर्फ page one का data. I just have page one data out here, right? If I filter this list locally, then I will see only 3 items, correct? But there are many more completed items in the database, right?
Yes.
So we cannot filter it locally anymore. Okay. So we have to get it in sync with the API. All right. So let's do this. So when we click on show complete, what we want is this completed equal to true. So if we see our API doc, completed should go as true. And then it will filter out all the completed ones. Okay. So you guys help me to do this. Gauravi?
Yeah, so we need to pass the another variable that completed
Okay, on which line?
20.
Good. So completed. And what will be the value?
Value will be that show completed.
Perfect. I'll save it. Will this work?
No, I think
Okay.
Array
What
may
is missing?
change.
we
Array
need to
may
change that array.
Perfect. So we need to also add show completed to the dependency array. We'll come to this error in some time, but yeah, we need to show this. So right now, if we see, yes, we're seeing all the completed ones. Let's clear this. Right now, we'll see completed equal to false is going.
Yeah.
But that's still good. That's still a step forward, right? So we are getting completed equal to false means all the incomplete ones will be shown. And when I say show completed, the network call didn't go again. Okay, I think it was already cached. That's right.
It will no. हाँ
It was already cached.
10 सेकंड के बाद जाएगा.
It went after 10 seconds, right? So show completed equal to false. If I go on the next page, page 2, limit 10, completed true. Call again. Perfect. This seems like it's working well, right? So now there is an issue, right? We don't want to pass this completed key if show completed is false. अगर show completed false है तो ये completed key ही नहीं जाना चाहिए. How can we do that? Any idea? So think about this as a normal function.
टर्नरी ऑपरेटर यूज करके किया तो
हाँ, ternary operator use करके कैसे कर सकते हैं?
अगर शो कंप्लीटेड फॉल्स है तो फिर वो की नहीं भेजेंगे, अगर ट्रू है तो फिर भेजेंगे.
So where? How do I write this? Do I write it on 21 where I can put it here? कैसे करेंगे?
हैश में मैप मतलब इंक्लूड ऐसे कुछ करना पड़ेगा.
Okay. Okay. So I'll tell you two ways of doing it. One easy way is make a new argument called payload. And payload equal to this particular entire thing. अब इसमें से show completed वाला part निकाल देते हैं. Now, if show completed, then payload dot completed equal to true, and here we will pass payload. So abhi only when the payload, okay, the type should be get to do params. So now only if show completed is true, then payload dot completed will get added. Otherwise, it won't get added. Making sense? So now it shows us all. Okay. Another way of doing it, slightly easier way, is we keep it like it was before only, and we can write show completed question mark. If it is true, then true, else undefined. So if it is false, it will go as undefined. Now, whenever we send something in the API as undefined, it will not go inside the payload. Okay, so we'll see this. Okay. अभी आप देख रहे हो, so it is undefined actually. Completed is undefined, but when it goes into the API, it gets deleted. So only page 1 and limit 10 go. Okay. So this is a slightly simpler way of doing the same thing. Now, cool. Let's move on to creating a new to-do. Now, you guys need to tell me. So if I have this form, right? Add to-do form. Okay. Once I add this to-do item, what do I need to do once I click on add to do? So I will have some loader. So let's say the loader will be on this button. Okay. If the button is loading, then we'll show loading. Otherwise, we'll show add to do. Okay. And it will be disabled when it is loading. And this is a typical UI experience, user experience. Okay. So when I click add to do, what all should happen? Can one of you all tell me?
Like we need to write about one function,
Yeah.
and in that function we have to set that reactively, so it will show that the state is loading or
Sorry. Don't think about React query right now. Okay. Just think कि app में क्या होना चाहिए. तो पहले तो just think about what should happen in the app. First is a post API call should go. Right. After we get the response from the post API, we need to update this to-do list.
Yes.
Right. How will we update it?
We will again call that API call.
Correct. So first way is we again fetch this API. Okay. Second way is we can take, so in the response, we will get the created to do. Right. So when we get the new created to do in the response, we can add that to the list locally.
Okay.
Okay. Ab kya hoga? We will add it locally, and next time, if suppose the user refreshes, so hamare local changes to chale jayenge, but the server will already have that too, right? So we won't have to worry about it.
Right.
This is making sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Siley, you're also clear?
Yes.
Great. So let's start doing this. Now for doing this add to do functionality, there is a different hook. Okay. So there is a different, I'll just actually go through it and I'll say use mutation. To do mutation equal to use mutation. Whenever we want, so think about it this way. Whenever we want to trigger some action on a API on a user action, just say I'm clicking on this button, I want some API to go. I'm clicking on, yeah, actually, this is the only example we have right now. So if I'm clicking on one of these checkboxes, right, I want the API call to go. See, if I'm clicking on this, I don't want API call to go. I want the state to change, and then the API should go by itself. But when I click on add to do, I want to call the post API only then. If when the component mounts, I don't want add to do to get called. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Post function should not get called when the component mounts. It should only get called when I do a certain particular action. Same with patch API. It should not get called when the component mounts. It should only get called when I click on something. Okay. So whenever we have an action like that, which is mostly the post and your patch APIs. Okay. So whenever you have a post API or a patch API, which you have to trigger on some action, not when the component mounts, that is when you will use mutation. Okay. useQuery is used whenever you want that data to be fetched when the component mounts. This is the only difference between the two things. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Cool. So now, use mutation. Use mutation does not generally take a key. All right. I have never used the use mutation with any key. So you can, it's not something that you need to know about. Okay. What it does take a function le leta hai as an argument, right? So our function is going to be post to do, right?
Yeah.
And now let's just see what we are getting inside this add to do mutation. Let's console. Okay. So getting some data is undefined, obviously, because we've not got any data only. Error is null. Yeah. Is loading is fault, is paused false, is success false, is idle is true. So this is something that is idle right now. There is nothing that is happening with it. है ना? सब कुछ ही false है. Is loading is false, everything is false. We get mutate. So mutate is basically क्या बोलते हैं? It's like a wrapper function. ठीक है? So mutate will do the same thing that post to do does. We have to treat it as if it is post to do only.
Okay.
Okay. Just imagine कि उसको wrap कर दिया और अलग नाम दे दिया. That's it. Nothing else. Internally क्या करता है? Mutate does different things. You know, mutate will set the loading state. It will set the success. It will set the error. All of those things. But हमारे लिए mutate just runs the same function and accepts the same arguments. We don't need to change anything in that case. I'll show you this, right? So I have used mutation of post to do. Okay. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to say mutate is loading, which will be, I will have to alias it because there are two is loadings. So post to do loading. Okay. And let's just do that, right? So this mutate function, I'll just call it add to do. And now there are two add to do's. Fantastic. Okay. Post to do mutate. So inside add to do, now I will call this post to do mutate function. Okay. And I need to pass certain arguments to post function. So just again, treat it as if it's exactly this post to do function. So what does the post to do expect in its arguments? It expects only a body, and the body shape is user ID, title, and completed, right?
Yes.
So we have to pass these three things. All of them are compulsory. So user ID right now, I'll just pass it as random 4. Title is going to be the title that we get inside this argument only. And completed by default, we will pass it as false, right? And yeah. So now when we add to do, actually the post to do API should go. So maybe I'll write a console log also to make it clear. Post to do. Let's clear this. Let's say something add to do. So it's triggering the same function, nothing outside of it. Okay? Baki kuch nahi karta hai. And if we just check the entire, so if we check, we have sent the payload, right? Completed false, completed title and user ID to ayo, it went in body. What happened? The post API, there's something wrong. Fine, we just have to pass the body here. Sorry, my mistake. I'll refresh this and we'll test. Test, add to do. So this to do's went with this payload, completed title and user ID. And in preview, we got it along with a new ID, which is 202. Okay. So this is working, right? Even when we click on the mutation, use mutate. You know. Now I want to show this loading state, right? When the form is submitting. So I can pass it to the function component. Loading equal to post to do loading. And I'll accept it here. So if it is loading, I'll show loading, otherwise to do. Let's, and we'll also say it should be disabled when it is loading. Hey, yo, it's happening too fast. Oh, I haven't saved it also. Sorry, my bad. Sample. It's happening very fast. Okay. So right now, this is happening too fast. Give me one moment. Please. Thank you, Gauravi, and oh my God. कभी हम लोग ने स्टॉप किया था ये एपीआई जब किया था ना, तो ठीक है, इतना ज्यादा नहीं था.
यहाँ पे set time out.
Yeah. Oh, but you all had some lovely questions, man. Anyways. So if we see this right now, right, I'm going to go back to that add to do part for some time. Sorry, guys. So now we can see that this is loading for 700 milliseconds. At the end of when the API call succeeds, okay, I'll record this later. It doesn't matter. It's fine. I don't want to do it again. Okay. कहाँ पे थे हम? हाँ, इसको explain कर रहा था ना मैं. हाँ, so React query. So let's imagine query client ना has an entire object. ठीक है? उसको इस object में so once we call the to-dos API, okay, it will create this to-dos ka key inside its object, and it will add whatever data we have. Okay. Now, when I say so अभी हम लोग ने एक stale time डाला है, ठीक है, 10,000 seconds milliseconds का ना, तो after 10,000 milliseconds, okay, it will how do you say, तो अगर ये component unmount हो जाता है, okay, मतलब now this component is no longer mounted on the screen, कोई और screen पे हम लोग, okay, तो उस केस में क्या होता है, to do's is not mounted anymore, तो query client इस चीज का track रखता है, okay, कि to do's अभी live नहीं है, और जब 10 सेकंड हो जाते हैं ना, तो it will just delete it. Are we on the same page so far?
Yes.
नहीं समझा, कुछ डाउट है? I'll explain one more time क्या? So first time जब ये page mount load होता है, right, and it sees a use query, it basically it will create check this query key, और वो एक object में डाल देगा, एक बहुत बड़े object में जो globally available होगा हमारे पास, okay. So to do's key में अब वो data store करेगा हमारा जो भी हमने डाला है उसमें, है ना. Now when we say query client dot invalidate queries, basically query client क्या बोलता है, अच्छा ये जो to do's वाला डेटा है ना, ये अभी डिलीट करना पड़ेगा और नया डेटा डालना पड़ेगा उसमें, ठीक है. तो query client को पता है कि to do's का फंक्शन कौन सा है, all of that it knows, it has all of this information with it, okay. So it just calls that API again and it replaces the data, simple as that.
Okay.
Okay. And this same thing happens when we expire 10 seconds. मतलब अगर 10 seconds हो जाते हैं, right? हम लोग ने जो stale time डाला है ना index में, तो अगर 10 seconds हो जाते हैं, if yeah, these 30,000 seconds, sorry. So if this 30,000 milliseconds get over, then in that case, it will do the same thing. It will say this to-do's data is now invalid. We need to refetch it again next time. Okay.
Okay.
ठीक है.
एक question था just.
Yeah.
Suppose we have one button.
हाँ.
Okay, on that button we have to call that list again. Suppose we have a refresh button.
हाँ. Okay. Perfect.
So we have to call that list again. So
Yeah.
can we do that? Client
Yeah.
dot invalid query to this.
Yeah, you can use it there also.
On that button click, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. We can also yeah, you can definitely do that. Invalidate that query. Easiest. Okay, cool.
एक क्वेश्चन था.
Yes, please.
अभी जो मतलब हमने टू डूज को जो क्लाइंट मतलब क्वेरी क्लाइंट हम बोल रहे थे कि 30 सेकेंड्स के बाद 3 सेकेंड्स के बाद वो फिर से लोड करेगा. अगर हम सेम पेज पे नहीं होंगे तो बस डिलीट करेगा क्या उससे या फिर लोड भी करके
it will just delete. नहीं, it will delete it क्योंकि the query client will say अच्छा ये data is not being used anymore, है ना? So then let's just delete it.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. So one small thing, one small tweak in my answer is कि it automatically fetch नहीं करेगा. अगर 3 seconds उसका stale time है, okay, तो वो automatically fetch नहीं करेगा. जब next time वापस API कॉल होता है तभी वो रिफ्रेश करेगा, नहीं तो फिर हमें पुराना डेटा देता रहेगा. ठीक है, लाइक वी सॉ कि अगर मैं ये पेज पे हूँ तो हर 3 seconds पे वो फेच नहीं होगा. राइट नाउ इट्स 30 seconds, राइट, in index.ts, but let's make it maybe 3 seconds for now. So it won't happen every 3 seconds. It won't automatically fetch. I'm there for 1, 2, 3, right? But abhi now I'll go next, I'll go previous, and I'll go next. तो अभी क्या हुआ, पेज नंबर 2 वापस मैंने कॉल किया within these 3 seconds. तो उसने बोला 3 seconds तक तो ये डेटा वैलिड है. ठीक है, so it will not make a API call second time for page number 2. All right, cool. So this is what React query is all about. Let's briefly run over it once again. Use query, you have to use it whenever you want to fetch some data immediately when the page loads or the component loads. Yeah. So this will run.
One more question here. Suppose I want to call the API on every 30 seconds.
Every 30 seconds?
Yeah, automatically.
Okay, that's also possible. So there is a option called refetch interval that we can set to 30,000 or let's say 3,000 right now. So in that case, it will call it every 3 seconds. Hopefully. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great.
There are many options like this. You can easily look at the documentation, maybe you can find out more about that.
Yes.
Cool. So use query. When the page mounts, immediately this function will get called. Data will initially be undefined. So we always have to handle that data can be undefined. Okay. So wherever we use it, we have to make sure that we account for that undefined case also. Okay. It gives us is loading. So when the data is being fetched, automatically it sets is loading and sets it true and false. And we just have to use this is loading, right? If there is an error, we can get that error inside this error object. Okay. This use query takes 2 arguments. One is the query key, okay, which basically tells useQuery, okay, hey, this is what I'm fetching. If the query key changes, this function runs again. Right? That's it out here. Second,
One more question.
yes.
Suppose we have suppose API send their own error, that data is invalid or something like that.
Correct.
Okay. So it's still in this error, or it will in data error? What?
So Axios error now. There is so inside the error, there is also response. Okay. So that API data gets sent inside this response. Inside this response, we have this data. Okay. And then inside that data, if you have sent some key like a message or something like that, that will be present. So you're absolutely right. So if the API, suppose, sends 404, and in response it says message, please try again. So this message we will get inside error.response. This is something that is specific to Axios. Okay? Axios में ये error.response उसका data, and inside data we will get this entire object. So inside data we can say data.message.
So this is response data is from API, or this is from Axios errors?
This one right now that we are using, the error message, that's from Axios.
No, that line number 29.
That will be from the API.
Okay.
So whenever we do error.response, this means this is the response from the API.
API. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Super question. Okay. Use mutation. We use that for any actions where we want to trigger an action on a user click or something like that, right? Trigger an API. It requires only one argument, which is which function you want to run, right? And the second argument, you can pass a configuration where you pass like, on success, what you want to do, on error, what you want to do, all of those things, which are also, we can pass to useQuery. Okay. And it has many, many options. We can check the API docs for that. We obviously can't cover everything in one session, but this is the basics of how you can fetch data using reactquery. Okay. Are we good for today?
Yeah.
Any more questions? Kylie, any confusion?
No.
Sure, na?
Yes.
कल टेस्ट होगा.
कल नहीं आएंगे बच्चे.
ठीक है. What I'll do is I'll push this code. ठीक है. Obviously, see, you all are learning a lot of new stuff in a very short span of time. So it will be a little overwhelming, I'm sure, especially reducer तो बहुत ठीक है.
हाँ, वो भी एक क्वेश्चन था मेरा कल के रिलेटेड.
हाँ. बोलो.
तो हमने कल मतलब प्रीवियस सेशन में रिड्यूसर किया था, राइट?
या.
तो रिड्यूसर के अंदर हमने एपीआई मतलब जस्ट लोकली हमने ऐड किया था. करेक्ट. तो अभी सपोज हमको उसी एक्शन के अंदर हमें ये वाले एपीआई कॉल करने हैं, तो हम लोग कर सकते हैं क्या कि जैसे कांस्टेंट ऐड टू डू का कॉल बैक?
नहीं, जनरली वी डोंट डू दैट. दैट्स नॉट अ गुड प्रैक्टिस.
ओके.
So what so जो reducer होता है ना, it is supposed to be a pure function. It should only manipulate your local state. So अगर कुछ ऐसा है, if there's some API call, ठीक है, that should happen outside it, and when the API success happens. So अगर मेरे पास कुछ है जो API के पहले call action होना चाहिए, which changes the state, and then after the API is successful, something that should update the state. Okay. So first we will dispatch an action. Okay. Suppose it's just say loading true, right? First we will dispatch loading true. Then we will make the API call. outside, not inside the reducer, outside. And then once it succeeds in the then block, we will make another dispatch saying set loading to false. We cannot do set loading true and then fetch and then set loading false inside the reducer. It is very bad practice.
Okay. Suppose we have to validate some data before to pass to the API.
Validate some data. Okay.
Okay. So can we do that in reducer? No?
So
क्योंकि वो हमें API के पहले कॉल करना, right?
Right. So now there are two ways, right? If you are validating the data और आपको सिर्फ true या false boolean चाहिए, ठीक है? ये true है या तो फिर ये valid है या तो फिर invalid है. And based on that, you want to either call the API or not call the API. ठीक है? Then you don't need a reducer. तुम normally उधर ही check कर सकते हो. Is valid equal to whatever validate that वो validator function होगा, right? So I just write it down. Let's say we have a validator function. Now what you can do is you can say validator function if is valid equal to validator function of whatever data we choose, है ना? Sorry, is valid. So if validator function will return true or false. So if is valid, then call API. Else, now here we might want to either we want to set some error. Okay. So in that case, we will dispatch some action using reducer. Barabar? So this we can do. Now there is another case. ठीक है? कि अगर आपका क्या बोलेंगे if sorry these TypeScript errors annoy me, so I just do all this stuff. If you have a form, okay, and that form has some error states, error messages, okay, let's say that the state is actually errors, and for different fields different errors. So initially they are all blank strings, you know, email blank string, okay. Now if you want to validate, and if the function is invalid, then you want to set all these errors, okay. So उस case में you can dispatch something that would be better. It matters from case to case. तुम दोनों भी कर सकते हो, दोनों तरीके से. This would be the ideal way of doing it. That's all.
Okay. ठीक है.
Yeah. Okay.
ठीक है.
Anything else, Saidi? Anything from you?
No.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. So thank you so much, guys. I'll see you again tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll cover React router. The thing is, मुझे नहीं लगता तुम लोग को कोई time नहीं मिलता होगा ना to practice these things.